So I know what it means to be an accountant who is very technically competent, very hardworking, diligent, and dependable. And I also know what it means to actually be influential. So I've lived both words. And to help us go through this technical presentation, I had shared a workbook that I have used to make my own transition, and I've shared that yesterday. So it will be good if we can also drop that so that the participants can follow through, because as we go through this conversation, from time to time we'll look at what some of the exercises in the workbook. The essence is really to ensure that by the time we're leaving this session today, that they will have something that we can actually, a playbook, sort of a blueprint that have been tested. At least it worked for me, and based on research I see that that workbook can also help one or two accountants in this meeting to make their own transition. So let's begin with this reflection from John C. Maxwell, a leadership coach, world-renowned leadership coach. So he said something that a person that is growing is always renewing themselves. A person that isn't growing loves to talk about yesterday. So in this instance, yesterday is all about what you're currently doing. What is your comfort zone? What you're already used to is yesterday. But for the fact that you're in this technical session and we are having this session, it tells me something that the people we have here, the over 200 people we have here, are people who are constantly renewing themselves. And I must thank Swan for creating room during these monthly meetings for us to renew ourselves. So finance is changing a lot. If we are going to shift to the external context, beyond what John C. Maxwell has said, the truth is that Gartner ran some reports, some research, and they have come up with a report. And they said that finance is currently being redesigned, whether we are ready or not. They argued that evolving finance organizations must now take as a priority the fact that they need to break down silos, allocate resources more deliberately, and increase the speed of insight. So the fact is that, yes, accountants, we gather data, we communicate that data, but now because of the uncertainties and what is going on, the speed of insight generation is what is key. And decision support is also key for the stakeholders that we serve. So we need to pay attention to this, that what the research they have done for top priorities, as they're just trying to find out what are the top priorities for CFOs, they realize that what stakeholders really want are business insights, and they want it to come fast. Because as accountants, we must realize that we're not here to serve ourselves. We are there in the business to serve our colleagues, maybe the boards, maybe our peers, any stakeholder really that we're serving. We need to understand what they need, and the priority is showing that what people value out of everything we are doing beyond the compliance is the speed at which we generate insight and decisions and support them in decision making. So they do not really care about the compliance work that we do that much, and hence the reason why you see some accountants complain that the pay is small. The pay is small because the work that you're doing is not really top value. So if we are not getting the feedback that what people are valuing is the speed of insight and the quality of decision support we are providing, it therefore means that we need to pay attention to that, and we need to begin to serve exactly what people need. And that is why we are saying that beyond compliance, we need to shift gears to generating insights faster and supporting decisions. So let me bring this home with a story, and let's us imagine an accountant. Let us call her Ada for ease of the conversation. So Ada is brilliant, like many of us here. She's technically strong. She knows how to close the books. She prepares the reports. She responds to auditors. And if there's any task deadline, audit deadline, they call Ada. Ada is reliable, hardworking, trusted. She has the number, but the question really is, does Ada have influence?
If somebody said the phone is on or the radio or TV, please.
And that question is really important. When the board is discussing cash flow, market expansion, business risk, is Ada head? Yes, Ada is there. She's seen, but is she head? When the company is trying to borrow money, restructure, renegotiate, reinvest, cut costs, and enter new markets, is Ada in the room, or is she called after a decision has been made? She's an accountant, she's technically competent, she has the number, but the fact is that she does not have the influence. And that is the reality for many accountants. We close the numbers, we can share the reports, we are trusted for compliance, but yet many a time we are not relied upon for strategic insight. And at this point, I would like us to go to our first workbook pause, which is the part 5. So if we go to that workbook, we'll see that there are some questions there for us. These questions are really for us to do like what we call self-awareness, self-audit, to try to get to know ourselves. There are a few questions there for us. If we are referring to that workbook, you see the questions there for you. So I'll pause for a moment so that you can go through it if that has been shared with you. I noticed it was shared on the platform yesterday, in the WhatsApp platform, so you can also get it from there if it's not there. So some questions that we have there is just going to help you rank yourself from a scale of 1 to 5. How do you prepare accurate reports and records? Do you currently prepare it very well? Are you known for that? Do you explain the numbers and what they mean for the business? Are you able to identify risk signals before they become major issues? Are you able to confidently connect numbers to operations, and communicate financial insight? These are some of the questions. And then when it comes to technology, are you able to use tech to improve reporting and decision makings? It's not an exam. It's really for us to become very aware where we stand on this. And then once we know what needs to be improved, what our biggest growth area is, it's easier to move on from there. So that is why we are pausing for a while, so that if you have the workbook, you can think for some seconds that what is exactly is my biggest growth area. Remember where we started from, that those who want to grow keep renewing themselves. So this is an opportunity for us to renew our minds, to renew ourselves, to identify exactly what we need to do moving on. So if you are very young and maybe you're just starting out, you might be battling fears and you might need to do some capability improvements. If that is true, then you need to identify what you need to do. If you are mid-career and you're feeling stuck, it's okay. Just be honest and identify what it is what am I strongly doing very well now? What am I getting applause for? And then what is my biggest growth area? Am I able to do this transitioning smoothly? So let me then share my own mirror moments. What I'm sharing with you, like I said when I started, is not something I'm very far from. It's something I have lived. So mine happened in 2015 when I moved from consulting into industry. Then I had strong technical grounding. I understood tasks, compliance, reporting, and audit. But when I moved into the IT industry, I quickly realized that knowing accounting standards and preparing reports was one thing. Understanding business reality was another, so I struggled. And at the time, the company had negative balance sheets, finance structure needed some fixing basically. There were reconciliations to be done, there were balances to explain, there were a lot of things to clean up. So I began with what I knew. I cleaned up the books, did the reconciliations, supported audit process, helped restore order, set up a firm structure for us to use. In fact, I was proud of myself. I was really, really proud of myself. Anyone who is here that have done this kind of work I described will know that it takes a lot of discipline, patience, courage, I must say, to actually do the cleanup and put order into place. About a year after, another reality quickly emerged. Yes, I really did get applause when I finished all of that. I was applauded. But then, a reality emerged. There was a dollar loan in the books, and exchange rate was moving. And if I moved, I think 2015-16 was when it moved from 100 and something to 200 to it was reaching the 300 region. So it was a big problem for us. So, but that taught me an important lesson, that finance must not only record risk, We must help the company to identify risk early enough and respond to the risk. And that is one of the first shifts I noticed, that beyond the compliance and the order and the structure I've put in place, I need to become very influential, making sure that I'm steering the business to managing what is important. And for every business, there are 3 important things. We'll soon get to that. Point. But let me just mention that one is money, the second is market, and the third is exposure. So everything a business is doing revolves around these 3 things. So anything you're doing, you must find a way to understand how is it affecting money, how is it affecting the business market, and how is it affecting exposure. So that was my first turning point. So then the question helped me change my role, and I would then send reports to my directors, the income statements and all of that, and I'll get this question: Uju, what are the facts behind the figure? At first I was actually very frustrated. Before I got to that turning point, I was frustrated. I was like, I'm putting in a lot of work, and then you're asking me the facts behind the figure. I'm not a salesman. I'm not the techie guy that is building the apps and all of that. Why are you asking me these questions? But then I soon began to realize that they were not just looking for numbers. They were asking for meaning. They wanted the story behind the performance. They wanted the risk behind the balances in the books. They wanted to know what the numbers were pointing to. They wanted to know what decisions need to be made. And that was really how I came to the turning point. Like I said, I was quite frustrated with the questions until I finally understood. And what helped me understand was that I began to research facts behind the figure, and I began to see how listed companies would do their earnings call, quarterly meetings, both locally and abroad, and I saw how they told the financial story. So one lesson I would like us to pick from here is that when you're getting feedback, don't get frustrated about it. Try to listen deeply and try to see what more you can do beyond what you're currently doing. That's one thing that's the first lesson I would say I would like us to pick from there, because it was frustrating. It took me a while, but eventually, by the grace of God, I was able to really listen, and I began to make research, and that was what helped me to realize that beyond the compliance and the things we've learned from our professional qualification and from the university, business wants something more. They want us to lead, to contribute to leadership. They want us to impact the business. And now, I know we all are also very used to control. When it comes to financial control, accounting, and putting the control in place, they are very important. Don't get me wrong, they are very, very important, because when the controls are very weak, things go wrong. Weak controls, when you see an organization where controls are very weak, I can tell you I faced that as well. At a time, we had the payment vouchers and the petty cash vouchers just sitting in different departments. Invoices were raised from different sources, some from the booklet, some from Excel, some from 2 accounting systems even when I joined. And there was no single source of truth for receivables, no single source of truth for payables. Loan balances and checkbooks lacked discipline. Now, this is one thing that we do well. I was able to quickly put control in place, but the business saw the control as if the control was going to stifle the business. So, but what then helped me again was that reframing that happened in my mind as I was trying to understand what the need was. I soon realized that I needed to put in governance. And governance is actually very practical. It is what happens when approval limits are clear, because at that time there was not clear approval limits. I had to make sure that where approval limits are clear. I had to make sure there were clear documentations. I had to make sure that there was segregation of duties. And those governance then make the records very reliable. Because when controls are weak, the business risk even becomes difficult to manage. There could be cash leakages, tax exposure, fraud risk, and even trust. So yes, the point I'm making is that the compliance work we are doing is actually very, very important. It's very important, but we need to know how to communicate the reason behind the control. The controls are not existing for their sake. They are existing to guard the business, to protect value, so that we can then build upon it and elevate our influence. And that brings me to currently what we do. Currently, accountants are trusted for compliance. It's given. But then they often say that we are silent when strategy is being decided. So the shift that we need here is to then think about how can we become a strategic voice when we're having conversations around risk, capital, governance, and enterprise value. What can we contribute? Can our voices be trusted? Because I tell you, compliance earns us credibility. However, it's a strategic insight that can build influence. And what is influence? Again, I go back to John C. Maxwell. He defined leadership as influence. So when I talk about influence, it's actually about leadership, from self-leadership to leading others. And what gives you that, what earns you that leadership is the level of the quality of insight that you are providing to the business. So with that said, I'll just go back to remind us again that this is really important. Why the speed of insight is important is because of volatility. Yes, we are recording transactions, we're hoping to end the month, but the truth is that a lot of things are moving from FS. In fact, just in the last 2 weeks, FS that was really relatively stable has started going up to above 1.4 as we speak. The receivables too can be a challenge. People can promise to pay today and then they are not paying you up. Finance costs, well, the CBN, they are kind of holding it. It can also be rising at some point, margin are compressed. Inflation sort of stable at the moment, around 15%, but then that's exactly not the reality in the street, if you tell me. Then if you have weak controls in the midst of this whole thing, it then means that you cannot rely on compliance alone. So compliance is the foundation, but definitely not the destination. So with that said, what is it that we need to do? What can an accountant do exactly to do that, to implement that transition? What can you do to implement that transition? One of the key things you need to do is risk signaling. So 3 things. The first is risk signaling. You need to be able to see things before they happen, just like the prophets, how they, in religious places, how they kind of tell us, okay, give us what professor and say this is what's going to happen. We need to become that predictive engine. We need to be able to review the data, leverage technology and see the pattern and be able to advise the business early enough before things happen. So that's one lever we can hold on to as accountants, that how are we managing, what risk I imagine, what should we do now? That is one thing we can hold on to. The second one is decision insight. We've gotten that feedback from Gartner report that the speed of decision and quality of decision is important to business executives. So we need to strengthen our capability around that. Then the third one is enterprise value. And what drives enterprise value? What drives enterprise values are around three different metrics, which is what I call money, market, and exposure. So when you talk about money, market, and exposure, those are the things that you need to manage those 3 metrics to maximize the enterprise value, which is like the company valuation. If it's a listed company, you can easily know what their market valuation is. If it's a private company, of course, even if listed, you can still do intrinsic valuation to know what is the value of the company. So if you go back to the workbook, the part 4 of the workbook, there is a guideline there that can help you to know exactly how to spot the signal. Now that we know that there are 3 things we need to do: spotting the signals, decision support, and maximizing enterprise value. From the workbook, the part 4, I expect us to go there to see exactly how we can spot the signal. There is a framework there that you can use. You simply choose you can think about your business or a project or an organization, and then try to identify what could be wrong. The examples of what could be wrong provided there, but then I need you to think about your own business, where you are. Choose something and begin to reason, what are the signals? What signals can I pick? Can I investigate them further? For each of the signals, you need to state what they may indicate, who should know, and what action you should recommend. So that's why, so if you go back to that word, the framework will help you to actually take it home to your business so that you can see exactly how to spot the signals, because this is one thing businesses value. And remember one thing they said about entrepreneurship: when you're an accountant, you're actually an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurship is all about solving problems. So once we now know that people value early warnings, early signals, as accountants we are very well equipped to do this. So we need to become masters of people that can read the warning signals and communicate it. That way we are raising our value to the business, and when we raise our value to the business, what will happen? They will pay us more, we'll get promotion, and those are the kind of things that everybody have ambition for. We all have ambition for financial sufficiency and financial freedom, if I dare say. So if you want to achieve all of those things, it means that you need to improve the value that you offer, and then you're able to capture more value for yourself. So after we have finished with the how to identify the early warning signals and how to communicate it in the workbook, I need to take you to boardroom relevance, because these are the 3 levels I talked about earlier on. I talked about money, and when you talk about money, it's all about financial performance of the business. And this is really our comfort zone, where we are talking about margins, operating cash flow, return on investment, return on capital employed. Then we talk about market, and for market, it's all about the growth of the firm, how competitive the firm is. Are we winning customers efficiently? Are we growing efficiently? Those are the sort of things. You can't say, oh, I'm not in sales, I'm not in marketing, I should not care about that. But hello, all of those things eventually affect the value of the company. So that's why we should care about what's going on there. Now we have exposure. Under exposure is really about risk. What's the brand visibility, and how are we trusted in the marketplace? Our customers, are they happy to recommend us? Net Promoter Score is one of the metrics we can use to measure that. What's our brand awareness like, and what's our brand recall? Do we have quality issues that have made us to recall some of the products? So as an accountant, don't be shy to say, oh, I just have to talk about the numbers. No. For every number in your books, try to understand what are the drivers, what's happening there, where is it coming from, and how does it affect these 3 things. There is no example of anything you tell me now that I won't be able to tell you how it connects to money, market, and exposure. And when you're able to connect whatever you're saying to these 3 levels, your board members will listen, because that's actually what the board is there to do. They are there to protect capital, which is money. They are there to maximize and become market leaders, and they are there to reduce risk, because when you reduce risk, you increase value. So with that said, once you now have access to the board, you have insights to share. We have on part 5 and 10 some things you can practice in that workbook to help you know how to actually speak to the board when you're in the boardroom. What should you say? Do not just say what happened. Say why it happened, what it means for the business, how it's impacting the business, and most importantly, end with a recommendation. And as you're ending a recommendation, try to point your recommendation to those 3 things we said: money, market, exposure. Don't just say it's going to increase this. No, say it is going to increase. If we invest in marketing, it's going to increase our brand visibility, our brand perception, and that can help us win more customers, and more customers mean more revenue. More revenue means more profit, and more profit, when sustained, can increase the value of the enterprise. that time they begin to understand that, oh, you actually see it end to end. You are not just an accountant that is just ending at revenue. No, you're talking about boosting the market value of the company, the intrinsic value of the company, and the brand value entirely. So if you're able to speak in that language, they will pause and listen to you. So that is that about board language. Do not just say this increased by this. It's easy to do those numbers, but please let us say what it means, identify the risk and opportunity, and then end with a recommendation. Make sure that our recommendation is being connected to those three metrics. Then there are situations where you might need to do scenario analysis, just so that it will show that you did not just come up with one recommendation. You will say, if you go this route, this is what can happen. If you go this route, this is what can happen. And based on that analysis, this is what you recommend. But do not come saying don't tell a lot of stories. Just say what happened, this is what it means, this is the risk and opportunity, and your recommendation. Then by the time you get follow-on questions, you can then describe how you came up with that recommendation. So that's that about that. Just for emphasis again, those three KPIs we said: money, market, exposure. Try to connect every of your recommendation to money, market, and exposure, please. Very, very important. Now, some of the 5 shifts that we need to do to become very future ready is that we need to begin to rethink who we are and what we do. We should need to stop seeing ourselves as bookkeepers and begin to see ourselves as value interpreters. And that is why when we say this has happened, we say this is what it means. So when you do that, you're actually beginning to change yourself from just keeping the books. And in fact, what's happening now is that accounting is becoming self-service to an extent, depending on where you work and the organization where you are. Because of the technology, a lot of people are keeping things, can actually do people that are not accountants can keep records, and then the accountant is basically doing reviews, and then there's an AI there doing the checks and flagging anomalies. For instance, in a banking app, by the time you are transferring money or you are receiving money, your books are updated. That's self-service. But then there are tools and controls, again, like we said before, that will do those checkup and allow it to go. So in organizations too, as people are raising POs, maybe raising bills, the journals are being created, the books are being updated. So we need to then become people that do the value interpreter. The season where it's only accountant that keep the books is in the past. So our value now is to make sure that we are understanding the numbers and we're interpreting it. We should focus less on transaction process. Like I said, many people now, even outside the finance department, accounting department, are also doing bookkeeping work. So we should focus on trying to understand the business we find ourselves. We should quit being very silent and become confident communicators. From manual comfort, let us all embrace technology and AI, because leveraging those things will free up time that we can use to then have a governance mindset. So these capabilities are very, very important that we embrace them, because these are the things that can help us do the transition. So, and like we said, you cannot reposition without rebuilding. And the truth of the matter is that as I was trying to rebuild my own career, I took time and took feedback to try to learn how exactly to achieve the things I needed to achieve. So if you do that self-reflection and you identify that there are certain gaps that you need to fill, please go ahead and fill them. Every time I identified a gap in my own journey, I try to rebuild around it. Like when I realized communication mattered a lot, I invested in learning how to communicate better. When I needed stronger business understanding, I studied business beyond finance, and that was when I went for my MBA. When I saw the importance of technology, even though I was working in tech, I leaned into digital finance, systems, dashboards. When I wanted to understand boardroom thinking, I paid attention to governance, control, board packs, committee conversations, and how senior business leaders frame decisions. So the point is that you cannot become strategic without boosting your capacity, without learning. Beyond the ambition, You need to tell yourself the truth and build capacity. So, what's the possibility? Is it possible? Someone in the room might be asking, is it possible for me to really become very influential? Is it possible for me to grow in my career and become a leader? Because influence is really about leadership, and leadership is all about impact. And once you can impart money, market exposure, you're able to command more value and capture more value for yourself, and that will eventually help your journey towards financial freedom. So, and I know this is one thing that a lot of people also struggle with, because even in my career and in my business where I consult for clients, I hear accountants say they usually will just get instructions where they tell them to process payments, make transfer, record transaction, and nobody listens to them, you know. But the truth is that you can become that person that before any transaction goes through or before any key decision is made, they're asking, has our accountant reviewed this implication? In my case, they will say, has you seen this? You know, it's still the same Uju that was asked what is the fact behind the figure in 2015, that now the board wants a confirmation that I have seen those recommendations even before it comes to the board. So this building capability can get you to the point where your business begins to link to your function before doing anything. So we are going to have our final workbook pause at this point. So at this point is the 30-day action point, because beyond listening here, it will give me a lot of fulfillment if we can create a 30 days action plan and actually implement them, execute them, and I'll be glad to hear the feedback of how you're doing around that. So if you go to the workbook, there are certain pointers there that can help you create your action plan. You just choose one lever. Is it money? So if you think that you're already too comfortable with money, please don't double down on money. You can pick markets, you can pick exposure, you can even pick communication. If the problem is that I know all of this but I'm struggling to communicate it, how should I frame it so it can be more impactful? Then choose it, and then you ask yourself, what about that thing exactly do I want to learn? And then you define the action. So what action do I want to do in 30 days? Who do I need to involve? And in fact, there are several parts, because that workbook is a 12-part workbook. So I have skipped some of them in this presentation. There is a part where you have to identify your stakeholders. Very important, because you can only do things, limited things by yourself. You need sponsors, you need mentors, you need other people in the department. You need to be able to become a person of influence. What Daniel Priestley would call key person of influence. You also need to go there and go through all of those aspects to see how to identify what matters for each of your stakeholder and how you can meet their need. And once you meet their need, you are becoming influential. And then you need to end with a commitment. Yes, you need to end with a commitment, because that commitment is to yourself. So make a commitment today of what you're going to do. Make a commitment. You could say, I will build credibility through compliance and earn influence through insight. And you are going to achieve that by doing what you have identified for yourself that you're going to do. This is really, really very, very important. So as I wrap up, I would like to return to Ada. Remember Ada? We talked about Ada at the beginning. We said that Ada, very brilliant. She knew the numbers. She can close the book. She prepared the reports. She knows how to respond to the auditor. She met deadlines. But the question was, did Ada have influence? So that was the question we talked about. And then I shared my own story and how I was able to do the transition. So now let's imagine a different Ada. Before board meetings, she does prepare for her numbers. She prepares the insight. She does not only say receivables increased, she says something like, receivables increased and this may create cash pressure. We need to review collection ownership, credit terms. So she's beginning to communicate different. She's not just saying, our trade receivables increased. She could say something like, gross margin declined and this may be linked to pricing, exchange rate, cost, execution pressure, project delays. We need to review the commercial model. So so she's not only just saying we are compliant, she says we are compliant today, but our current controls may not support our next level of growth. Just imagine your accountant saying this to you if you are a CEO, because I know we have some CEOs in the house already, that your accountant is telling you that yes, we are compliant, but they are flagging risk even before it happens, that we need to rebuild our system because our next level of growth, our current controls cannot take it. The same accountant, same technical foundation, different level of influence. So my final charge to us is that we should not abandon compliance. We should build on it. Compliance is the foundation. It earns us credibility. However, on top of it, we need to share insight speedily with our stakeholders, because those insights earn us influence. We then use that influence to create impact around money market exposure, because the future ready accountant, as we all know, does not just report the past, she shapes the future by sharing those early warning signals we talked about, by supporting decisions, and I thank you very much for listening to me, and thank you. I'm back to the organizers. I guess at this point we might take questions. I'll stop sharing so I can see whether there are any questions to handle and reactions.
Okay, thank you so much, dear facilitator. You can see that we already have accolades and people clapping for you. I believe that yes, you have delivered value this evening. Thank you so much. Dear Queens, do you have any question? If you have question, just raise your hand and then I'll recognize you.
How many questions are we taking? How many questions?
Can we take 3, ma?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I think Queen Chinwe, please go ahead with your question, unmute and ask your question. Queen Chinwe, if you are not ready, can Queen Oluwabukola Lawa?
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Queen Mothers and Queen. Thank you, the facilitator. I so much appreciate this section. So what I just want to ask is that in a situation whereby you are a finance team member, you are not like now we are speaking of an accountant moving to a CFO, has been gaining insight, but now you are reporting to another person, and that person is not even seeing the picture of the figures the way you have, and it's not allowing you to talk or giving you seeing things from your own perspective. So what's the best way out of this? Thank you.
Thank you.
Will she take all the questions or she answer them one by one?
I think we should take all first so that she can answer them as one. So Queen
Juma, would that be okay for you?
Yes, ma. I'm taking notes, ma. Yes.
Felix, please go ahead. Yes, I've called her name. Queen Felix, please go ahead with your question.
All right, thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Uju, for the nice presentation. All right, so my name is Felix Betobon. Okay, so my question is, you have actually talked about having influence, being able to, having influence anyway. So I want to ask, from the perspective that I am not able to sit in the boardroom.
Okay.
Now, if I'm opportune to go for an interview, how do I speak, or how do I have an influence or how do I sell myself to be something that is influential? Because let me say now I am an accountant. I aspire to maybe climb up to the position of a finance manager, where I can as well climb up to being a CFO. But because just like the first person asks a question, you are actually an accountant, you report it to somebody now does the board meeting. So that means definitely you're actually not even in the board meeting. Now, so my question will now be, how do I sell myself? What are those things that are good? How do I even sell myself to even becoming a finance manager to enable me to climb or even have this influence that you're talking about? That would be my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I will beg our indulgence. We'll have 4 questions, ma. Please. There's a
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, Tinuke, please, your question. Are you there? If you are not, please, Doctor. Okay, good evening.
Hello. Good evening, everyone.
Hello, we are with you.
Okay. So, thank you for the wonderful presentation, Madam Ojun. My question is in line with what others say, but I'll bring my own in a different dimension. What about, you talk about the corporate, let's say, governance now, control and governance. What about the people you are trying to relate to in terms of control are not yet to comply or to follow the real governance? So how do you approach that, and you want to become relevant? They see you as maybe overdoing things because you want, like you say, control is the foundation. So even though you want to build, you have to be, compliance. Let me say, compliance is the foundation. You're not ready to comply in order to even follow, because of the compliance you want to lay as a foundation. It's difficult, so they don't even want to see other strategy, other important roles. So how do you go about that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sandra, please, your question.
Thank you. Good evening, National Chair. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Ju, for a wonderful session. Very insightful. So I guess my question will help you connect other in terms of trying to respond to others. Outside the numbers, explaining the numbers, what other skills do we need to be influential, to influence? Maybe in terms of communication, relational skills, because that will also help you to balance it. You might get all the details regarding the governance, the control, you have all the numbers, the risk, you're flagging it. But if you are not able to communicate, you will not be able to get the real message across, or you are not a relational person. You think that everybody doesn't like you, right? So what other skills do you need actually? Because you might be very good, you know all the risk, you identify, but if you lack these soft skills, it's going to be difficult for you to influence in that perspective. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, ma. Dear facilitator, over to you.
Thank you, Adebola. Wonderful questions coming from our queens. I'm really pleased to listen to all of them because it shows that we recognize that this is very important for us to supercharge progress for our careers. And thank you. The last question kind of sort of tied everything together. So I'll just begin from there. Also because that's the one that is very fresh to my mind. That what skill? So let's say that I know how to do compliance. I understand the business. I know how to connect all of the metrics to what is important for the board or the owners of the business around the money, market, and the exposure. I'm able to do all of that. What is that one skill that needs to bind all of this together? That is stakeholder management. And if you look at the workbook, you'll find it there. Because relationship is key. We are humans. You must deal with people. We are not going to do life alone. And you need emotional intelligence. to actually be able to manage all of this. And emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness, you understanding yourself, and then being able to understand other people, to be able to, because you might not fully understand, but to be able to pick the signal of what exactly what's going on in their mind. Because sometimes people might be saying A and they meant B. So you need that emotional intelligence to try to unravel what is that thing behind what they're trying to say. So emotional intelligence very key beyond the technical capabilities that is required. Like you mentioned, you have I think you also someone asked about change management. Yes, that was the third question. So you need emotional intelligence, and I'm sure that we must have touched on it as part of our technical sessions that we've had. You will need to double down on it, from how to regulate ourselves. I liked when I was in the meeting how the chairperson was able to regulate how the things were. She did very well. Self-awareness. She was able to excuse herself for a while and say, let's carry on with this, I'll come back to this. So that's just a brilliant explanation of what you have asked. We need to know ourselves, be able to regulate our emotions, and be able to manage stakeholders even when they become very difficult. So that's one thing, one additional skill I will talk on as in response to the fourth question. I hope that helps. And one thing again I would say is that it's a journey. We never really get there. As long as we are still alive, we need to keep trying to improve on how we self-regulate and how we manage our emotions as we relate with others. So I move on to the third question, which is the question about compliance. We say compliance is the foundation, and when you're trying to do this and they think that you are the wicked accountant, my friend, I faced that as well. But one thing that has helped is learning change management. So that might be one topic you might need to go and learn about. So one thing is that when you spot weakness, try not to blame anyone, right? You try to explain what the weakness, the hidden cost of that weakness. Come from a point of solution, become solution driven, not blame. Don't look at, because the way you communicate change matters a lot. So you need to also, and that emotional intelligence we've just talked about will actually help you on how to communicate change. And in fact, that change we are talking about, communication, does not start from when you have designed the control. It's like when you have spotted the weakness. It's like maybe you have a real life case study of when something happened, and because that control was not followed, this happened. You can start with that story. So from the story, you now ask the person, what do you think we can do? So that this doesn't happen again, because the person have seen the impact. The person will give you suggestion. From the suggestion, that might not be perfect. You then try to refine it and say, okay, I've done a bit of research, this is how it should be done. So it's all about co-creation. What I'm describing is called co-creation. You are not blaming anyone, you are co-creating. And the reason why you're co-creating is because you want to earn buy-in. Once you earn the buy-in of your stakeholders, execution will become easier. I'm not saying you're not going to find difficult people, but at least they will know. You can remind them when they come and they say this, can remind them that we created all of this together. And then look out for the early adopters, people that are quick to adopt it, and use them to make them ambassadors, use them as examples. And that way, before you know, the laggards will begin to pick up and all that. The another thing that helps here is communication at the top, the tone at the top. So if, because of the first two questions are talking about, I'm just an accountant reporting to a head of finance, I'm not even in the boardroom, how do I become influential? So also making sure that somebody at the top has that final sign off around that control sort of also helps. So read on around change management, and that will give you the insights that you actually need to tackle compliance. Because if you don't get compliance sorted, it will affect the influencing part of the job, like you have recognized. So the second question was about the interview thing, that okay, I'm reporting to somebody, I'm not even in the board, I'm trying to, how do I then grow my career to even become in a position where I can begin to influence and lead? I'm not even in the boardroom, so how can I do that? So the truth of the matter is that all of the things we have described here doesn't just happen in the boardroom. It happens in your day-to-day activity. in your very day-to-day activities. It's like beyond your line manager, the people in your organization, who do they see you? Do they see you as someone that is very excellent? As like, if your work is receivables, your invoices are going on time, you're collecting payments, your reports are on time, are they seeing you as somebody who is excellent? And then the next thing you now need to do is stakeholder mapping. Beyond your line manager, who else are in the organizations? What do they need that finance can help with? And then begin to engage, so that you're not just known within finance. That finance is just like your comfort zone. People in other departments need to know you as somebody who is great at this, and you're also then identify whatever it is that they need, and you're helping them, so that by the time people are talking about who needs to be promoted or who can do this, your name will be, you can become influential. People can mention your name in town halls. I have somebody that is currently doing that thing very well here. He's just but, in fact, graduate trainee, but every town hall, this guy must make sure he's asking questions. He must be contributing something. He sits and think about through the agenda and think about something. In fact, the way he arrives at the town hall, he must make sure he has a haircut and dress so good that when he enters, somebody will ask. Even when he's entering the house, he's very strategic. It's almost as when the town hall is about to start, so that he will be noticed. As like he's playing that game very well. So positioning is important, and preparation is important, and make sure that you are seen outside of your department. So I guess I ended up answering the first question of somebody who is junior, not even in the board, and is trying to be seen and is trying to influence. And my final thing there is that try to become valuable, become a key person of influence, and that's a book I would recommend, Key Person of Influence by Daniel Priestley. You will learn how to become influential, how to become a key person anywhere you find yourself. That would be the response to the junior accountant. So back to the final question is the interview. So for the interview, one thing I do for myself, because I've also been interviewing, because it's important that you interview, it helps you to sharpen your skills and to understand what's going on, is that when you're trying to go for interview, try to research the organization very well. Understand what stage they are in, what is important to them. So sometimes the JD might describe some things, sometimes you might research online to find out what the struggle is in their industry. Understand what is triggering them looking for the position. So with all of those insights, try to then say what is the role of this vacancy, this role I'm being interviewed for. How does it help the company solve that problem? By the time you identify that and you're answering any question during interview, please try to connect. In fact, interview is the easiest one. As long as you have sufficient information, try to connect all your answers back to money, market, and exposure. They will not now see that you're not just someone who understands compliance, accounting. They will see as someone who actually understands business, who have deep accounting, deep business acumen, commercial acumen, strategic influence. Connect your answer, no matter what you're asked. After saying everything you've said, please connect it back to how it's going to help them make money or save money, how it's going to help them satisfy delight their customers better, expand their market share, what exposures is going to fix for them, how it's going to boost their enterprise value. But see, if you're not able to answer the fundamental question and you just go straight to money, market, exposure, my friend, they will not listen to you. So the first thing is that you must be able to first answer the core question, but try to extend and end your response by connecting to those 3 impact levers that we talked about, which is your money, market, and exposure. And I hope this really helps, but I'm happy to connect further with anybody after this that want to speak further on any of these things. So back to you, Adebola.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Uju. You did justice to the questions, and I thought to add something to what you have said. You have said something like that in between, but I wanted to make it direct that for those that need room for practicing, because you said that getting there is a journey. It's not something you get to in a day. It's a journey. So you are a junior accountant, or you are in a position where you feel that you don't have influence here. it, but you need to build it, you need to practice for it. That interview will come, but it's the background work that you have been doing that will speak for you when you get to the interview. And that is, for me, volunteering for causes, which Swan is very well known for. Put yourself in position where you can be in committees, where you can function, where your brain can, tax your brain on different activities, different positioning that you need to work on. So once you do that, when the opportunity comes, you would have prepared for it, and it will just be as if you ace it.
Exactly.
You look so brilliant. You look so brilliant. You appear so brilliant and so composed, so competent, you can say. So that's my addition to it. Especially for those soft skills, we can know all the technical things, but if the soft skills are missing, we need to work on them, and then that is where social causes come. Be in Swan, participate, volunteer for the committees. God help us all.
Amen.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much once again, Uju. And Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity. I think at this junction, I come back to you, ma'am.